Happy Tuesday, everyone, and welcome to Beyond the Score. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to spend some time with us today talking about conducting a comprehensive assessment for our youngest learners. And we're going to be talking specifically with regards to using two of the products that we sell here at Riverside Insights, the BEAS and ESGI. So we're going to go ahead and get started. There is a copy of the handout that's attached to the control panel, so be sure to download that and save that prior to exiting out of the presentation. Also, we are recording this, so if you get pulled away, we will have the recording available for you, so you can reach out to us and we can send that to you. We do have future Beyond the Score webinars that are scheduled, so be sure to check out those on our Riverside Insights webpage under Professional Development and Webinars. And if you have any questions that come up or comments, you can always use your chat box, use the chat area of the webinar to enter those, and we will try to address those questions at the end of today's session. So my name is Tammy Stevens. Full disclosure that I do work for Riverside Insights, and we are going to be talking about two of our products within a case study. I'm the Senior Manager of Clinical Product Support and Training here at Riverside Insights. I'm one of the authors of the Core Selective Evaluation Process, the CSEP model, which is a PSW model for identifying students with learning disabilities. Prior to coming over to Riverside, I worked as a university assistant professor at Texas Women's University and was in charge of their educational diagnostician program. And then prior to doing that, I was an educational diagnostician in schools here in Texas, and then also a special education teacher. So got about 20 plus years of experience working in the field of special education. Again, appreciate you guys being here. But I also appreciate having my colleague here, Rebecca, and I'm going to let Rebecca say hi and introduce herself.
Thanks, Tammy. Hi all, my name is Rebecca Elliott. I am a product manager here at Riverside Insights, and I specifically manage the Battelle Developmental Inventory Suite of Assessments. I as well have a history being a special education teacher in my early career, but since have worked on some ed tech products and have a master's in education, innovation, technology, and entrepreneurship.
All right, and thanks for being here today with us, Rebecca.
Yeah.
Today's agenda, we're going to start off with talking about the importance of early learning opportunities, and then we're going to look at some of the key foundational skills that are necessary for students to be successful, both developmental and academically. So we'll be looking at those. And then we're going to talk about early assessment and intervention, and the importance of early assessment and identifying those areas where the student is struggling so that we can intervene early on. And then what we'll do is take you through an actual case study that's going to introduce a child who has been administered the Battelle Early Academic Survey. We've taken the information from that BEAS report to identify areas for to establish goals and objectives. And then we're going to introduce the uses of ESGI. And ESGI is a system that we can use to monitor performance on those goals and objectives. So we know that there is this great importance with regards to early learning opportunities. We know that when students have early learning opportunities, they oftentimes are more successful in school, academically, as well as socially, etc. We also know that those key foundational skills that students acquire often happens between birth and age 5. So there's a lot that goes on within that age range. 90% of the brain growth occurs during this period. And we know that parents and caregivers are the first and most influential teachers. So having that interaction with the parents, that language with the parents. Children learn those valuable language skills, the literacy skills, math skills, as well as the social emotional learning skills. And those are again, often learned through being read to, being talked to, and through purposeful play. So when we talk about learning, children up to the age of 5, again, learn through best through imitation. And any of you that have worked with or have young children, you have probably witnessed this. So there's a lot of imitation that goes on. I know with my granddaughter, it's fun to kind of sit back, at least early on in her life, around age 5 or so, and watch her imitate the things that she sees around her. They also learn through repetitions. So hundreds of gentle repetitions in a safe, supportive environment with someone they love and trust. And then again, parents and caregivers who give attention, respond and interact with their children are helping build that child's brain. It's really building that network of neurons through being read to, being talked to, being played with purpose. And this development helps a child build those foundational skills needed to draw upon as new learning occurs. So it's fun to watch these kiddos, or even going to the supermarket and watching, observing parents with their children. And I often talk about, we see parents in the produce section picking up different fruits and vegetables and talking about how they smell and the shape of the fruit or vegetable, the colors, etc. So as they're doing this, obviously it's impacting students' learning. So when we look at the early readiness skills, we have an outline here of some of those readiness skills that are, again, very important for our early learners. Obviously, print knowledge is the start of, reading, being able to differentiate between a print from a picture or the function of print, the book rules, understanding where the front of the book is, the title of the book, understanding the way in which they read from left to right, etc. Letter naming, print components, etc. That all falls up under that print knowledge. And then there's also the linguistic awareness. So again, active listening skills are developing. We're developing that vocabulary as the students being talked to, rhyming words, segmenting words and sentences, and then phonemic awareness. And then finally, the emergent writing is where we start out with the scribbling and the drawing, and then having them copy letters, and then print letters and name, and then also invented spelling. So these are all those early readiness skills that, again, are important when students enter kindergarten to ensure that they're going to be on track. We can look at how a student's performing in these areas to see if they're typically performing or atypically performing and maybe in need of some type of intervention. So also looking at the importance of reading proficiency. And again, research has shown that reading proficiency is one of the most important predictors of high school graduation. So looking at that level, that student's level of reading proficiency by the end of 3rd grade gives us a lot of information about the student. More than 85% of the curriculum is taught by reading. And then by the end of third grade, 74% of struggling readers never catch up. So again, it's so important that we try to identify these kiddos early on to provide them with the intervention that they need. So without the strong foundation in reading, these children are left behind at the beginning of their education. And then it ends up kind of building upon itself, and that students can become, they start struggling more, and they become, they get to the point where they don't like school. It can have an impact on them socially, embarrassment, things like that. So again, we want to make sure that we are identifying these kids early. And then the importance of math proficiency. So again, with math skills, it encourages logical reasoning, the critical thinking, and also creative thinking, you know, ensuring that the student is thinking abstractly, problem solving ability, etc. So again, those math skills help in analytical thinking. So while they're solving those math problems, data is collected, disassembled, and then interconnected to solve them. So there's different qualities, I guess, of math and the importance of math listed here in the bullets, but it really helps develop ability to think, helps explain how things work, increases the speed of intuition, helps develop overall intelligence, money awareness, etc. So both the reading and the math proficiency is important for our young kiddos. And then the next couple slides just talk about the developmental math milestones. Again, we list these here just for you to see and to be able to reference as you are assessing these young kiddos to see what is considered typically developing milestones versus atypically developing, so that we can compare students' performance. So for toddlers ages 1 to 2, they should know that numbers mean how many, so they're counting with their fingers. They know able to match some of the basic shapes. They're exploring measurement by filling containers. Then when we're looking at preschoolers ages 3 to 4, recognizing shapes in daily activities and settings, they're sorting by color, shape, size, purpose, etc. So it's interesting too when you think about these early math skills, these foundational math skills, a lot of them go back to language and understanding language as well, understanding greater than, less than, bigger than, smaller than, etc. And then we go on to talk about some of the other areas of from kinder ages 5 to 6. Again, a list of what we would typically expect the child to be able to perform. And then your first and second graders ages 6 to 7. So at that point where they're starting to know the difference between 2 and 3 dimensional shapes, so cubes, cones, cylinders, and pyramids. They can count to 100 by 1s, 5s, and 10s, etc. So we know that when students they are starting behind, they're entering school without the skills that they need. We know that it's a real challenge for them to catch up, to really close that learning gap. This was an astounding number for me. It stated that 40% of children enter kindergarten 1 to 3 years behind. It's a lot of kids coming into kinder who are already starting behind. And we know that when students start behind, it has a lifelong impact on them. So again, the earlier we intervene, the earlier we're able to identify specific areas that the student's struggling in, and the earlier we're able to provide those that instruction, the better the outcomes are going to be for these students who are starting behind. So that's where we talk about early identification and intervention. We want to be able to assess and intervene early. You know, using some of the tests like the BEAS coming into kinder, looking at where that student has strengths, where that student is struggling, so that we can again identify them early on. So there's many different avenues to assessment. I know a lot of school districts are universally assessing developmental, early literacy, and mathematics skills for all students so that they can identify them early on. It can also be part of a transition assessment from pre-K to kinder. Might be part of RTI, student might be receiving, or MTSS, be receiving some services through there. Could be part of a kindergarten readiness assessment, or part of a full and individual evaluation for special education. So they may have a developmental delay or some other disability area in which the student needs special education services. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca and let her talk to you a bit about the BEAS and ESGI.
Thanks, Tammy. Yeah, so when we know that all of our students are coming into kindergarten on so many different levels, and we're going to talk about a pairing today of two different products to really help you understand the individual needs of each of your students using the BEAS, and then using ESGI to help progress monitor their progress throughout the year. So using BEAS and ESGI together, BEAS will be your baseline data that you benchmark multiple times a year to see the growth in those early literacy and mathematics skills. And then throughout the benchmark, you'll progress monitor weekly or multiple times a week using ESGI to make sure that they're gaining the skills they need to make that progress. So first, looking at the BEAS. So the BEAS is the Battelle Early Academic Survey. And that is an assessment part of the BDI-3 family, and it assesses early literacy and math skills in ages 3 years, 6 months through 7 years, 11 months. So the BEAS is great because it can be administered one-on-one by a lot of different people. So you could, a preschool teacher, a Head Start teacher, kindergarten, special education, general education teachers can all administer this, as well as educational diagnosticians, school psychologists, speech language pathologists, and trained paraprofessionals. So the BEAS really addresses the importance of those early literacy skills and really assessing at which developmental milestones within those skills each student is at. So although babies don't become readers for several years, they do begin the developmental of those necessary skills for reading and writing pretty much from birth. And the first 3 years of life are super important for them developing these foundational skills that will lead to their reading skills. So the BEAS literacy domain is based within the 5 pillars of reading. So it addresses phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension, which all lead to proficient reading. So right here, you can see the literacy domain of the BEAS, and these are all the things that the literacy domain assesses for each student. So there's a subdomain of print concepts. There's phonological awareness, which goes over rhyming, syllables, onset rhyme, phoneme identification, blending, segmenting, and phoneme manipulation. The next subdomain is phonics and word recognition. This is where you assess the student's ability to do letter identification, letter sound correspondence, early decoding, sight words, nonsense words, long vowel patterns, inflectional endings. And lastly, it also assesses listening comprehension and students' fluency. So to start off, the first subdomain of the literacy domain is print concepts. So within this domain, there's an understanding of basic concepts of print because it's essential for the child to move forward as a reader. So really understanding features of English print in the analysis of a picture book. The child's given a picture book and asked to identify different elements such as the title, the first page, specific text on the page, and the direction in which the text should be read. The child also asked to follow along in a text as the examiner reads it and identify individual sentences and punctuation marks. The next portion is phonological awareness. So this is where you assess the student's ability to identify rhyming or produce rhyming words, syllables, onset rhyme of words, phoneme identification, phoneme blending and segmenting, and phoneme manipulation. Next, we dive into phonics and word recognition. So this is letter identification, letter and sound correspondence, early decoding skills, seeing what sight words they know, being able to make sense of nonsense words, long vowel patterns, and inflectional endings. Next assessed is listening comprehension. So this assesses their ability to listen and demonstrate understanding of what they have heard. And lastly, in the literacy domain, fluency is assessed, and this is done by how quickly a student can name pictures under timed conditions. So next, for that mathematics domain of the BEAS, the mathematics domain is made up of 4 different subdomains. So it covers numbers, counting, and sets, geometry, measurement and data, and operations and algebraic thinking. So first, for numbers, counting, and sets. So this subdomain can be given to ages 3 years, 6 months through 7 years, 11 months. And you assess counting one-on-one correspondence, identifying numbers based on visual prompts, comparing values, and analyzing and completing different patterns. The next subdomain is geometry. So that's the same age group, and that is with identifying shapes, being able to label shapes, and combining and matching a visual model. Next assessed is measurement and data. So that's 3 years, 6 months through 7 years, 11 months. And this is where the student applies knowledge of visual attributes when analyzing pictures. They analyze data presented in a simple picture graph and using pictures of clocks to tell time. And the last subdomain of the math domain is algebraic thinking and operations. And this one is just for the a little bit older students who are 5 years through 7 years, 11 months. And with this subdomain, they add and subtract objects with the aid of illustrations and also are asked to solve simple addition and subtraction equations. This is an example of a report that is then produced after a child completes this assessment and what information it gives you. This is a snapshot of the literacy domain of the report. You can see it gives a scale score, raw score, standard score, percentile rank, but on the right, you'll see some of the guidance of the performance levels where it'll say whether the student is on track, if they need to be monitored in this subdomain, if they require support. And then on the next is similar snapshot, but just showing the mathematics domain.
Thank you, Rebecca. So in addition to using the BEAS to identify for early identification, we could also integrate the BEAS within our special education evaluations. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. With the BEAS, we can use it with the BDI. Again, Rebecca went over the different professionals who can administer it, the educational diagnostician, school psychologists, speech pathologists, or private clinicians. And the two together can be used to help determine eligibility for special education. Again, we can use the information from these robust reports to help develop that individualized family services plans or the IEP programs for students. And then we can also use it to, as Rebecca mentioned, to benchmark and document progress on those IEP goals and objectives. So the BEAS can be used for early academic skills. Again, we talked about the 3 years, 6 months, beginning at the 3 years, 6 months. And this is an earlier measure that can be used to measure the academic levels of children with a variety of developmental delays. So as you saw with the literacy domains and the math domains, it's a very comprehensive assessment. We can use it with kids with, who might have autism, a cognitive delay, motor delay, speech and language delay, or those that are identified as non-categorical. So again, making sure that we are taking the information that we obtain from the BEAS and merging that information with other data sources that's been collected on the student. We can use that to develop that information to develop the IEP goals that teachers, special education teachers, and gen ed teachers need to work on with the students. So what we're going to do next is introduce you to a case study, and we're going to identify some of these goals and objectives that was pulled from the information that was collected on the student. So one of the questions that's often asked is, how frequently can I administer the BEAS? And as we mentioned, you can administer the BEAS as a benchmark assessment as well. So you can administer it at the beginning of the year and the end of the year, or we just have to make sure that the second test administration takes place no less than 4 months after the first. So that's why it would be more of a benchmark versus progress monitoring. And then again, using your BEAS for IEPs, we can use it again to up to 3 times a year, beginning, middle, and end of year, to progress monitor and look at current levels of performance. We can use the BEAS for short-term goals as benchmarks to document mastery. We can use it to also determine percent or rate of mastery for annual goals. And then we can use the BEAS to write next year's goals based on the progression of skills assessed and the age grade-based standards set by your district or state. So now Rebecca's going to introduce us to our case study and walk us through the case study.
Awesome. So yeah, now we're going to dive into a specific student, the BEAS, and then introduce ESGI and how it can be used with the BEAS. So this is Christopher Robin. Christopher Robin is 5 years old, and he started kindergarten in the fall. Prior to starting kindergarten, he was identified with a developmental delay in preschool. So he's starting kindergarten already with an IEP. But now that he started, his kindergarten team has 2 goals. The first is to adjust his IEP at his upcoming transition meeting to have more goals that are focused on academic strengths and weaknesses. And then they also need to pinpoint a progress monitoring tool to help benchmark those goals between the different assessments. So going back to goal 1, so academic strengths and weaknesses. So the team is going to start at the beginning of the year with giving the BEAS assessment to determine his early literacy and math skills. So this will give us our baseline data. So as you can see, Christopher Robin's BEAS literacy results given at the beginning of the year show that he requires support in a lot of areas within the literacy domain. I'll point out specifically with phonological awareness, phoneme identification, phonics and word recognition, and letter sound correspondence and fluency. And then within the math domain, he needs support in most things except algebraic thinking and operations, but he'll require support in numbers, counting, sets, geometry, measurement, and data. So now that his IEP team has those results, and if Tammy, you could click a few times to show some arrows to point out where we use those results within the IEP. So first is the IEP goals. So his IEP goals were adjusted to include those areas that were identified on that BEAS report. So you'll see that one of his IEP goals that was created was verbally segmenting sentences. They also want him to be able to recognize a pair of rhyming words, lowercase letter recognition, and letter sound production. Within math, they added counting and producing a set of objects up to 10, and identifying and sorting basic shapes. You can also see that his strengths and weaknesses were updated according to the BEAS. So he has a relative strength in listening comprehension, in print concepts, and shows some weakness in areas for growth in phonological awareness, beginning phonics skills, and counting and one-on-one correspondence. It was also noted on this IEP at a glance that the student will be benchmarked 3 times a year using BEAS, and that they're going to monitor his progress 2 times weekly using ESGI. All right, so now that they've updated his goals and they know his baseline data, we're now going to progress monitor his growth using ESGI. So we'll go ahead and play this video that introduces ESGI and how it's used with Christopher Robin.
Christopher Robin has been assigned to your class. He is a student who has been identified as having a developmental delay and is receiving special education services. He has an IEP and has been assessed using the BEAS. Since Christopher Robin came to you with a BEAS report and IEP in place, your path to helping him grow his skills is clear. You will begin by adding Christopher to your roster in ESGI. You can then look at the BEAS report and his IEP for areas of concern you will want to address going forward. Once you know which skills need to be addressed, you can find the corresponding tests in ESGI's Test Explorer and add them to your dashboard. There are over 2,500 preloaded tests to choose from. You can modify any test as needed or even create your own. Once your subject tabs are set up with the test you've chosen, you can start assessing. Choose the student and the test you'd like to use. You can test all items or only those items the student missed previously. Testing is simple. You can even add notes as you assess to help you remember important details that are useful in guiding instruction going forward. After assessing, you can view the pie chart, test history, test details, or even generate flashcards. Our library of automated reports is just a click away. Here, the student detail report is quickly generated for a full overview of Christopher's progress on his BEAS-related goals. The item analysis gives real-time data broken down by skill and can be sorted by least or most known item. Downloading this report in Excel will also provide additional details drilled down to how each student performed on each item, making this perfect for data meetings or for sharing reports with your administrators. Finally, you can quickly generate the parent letter in the student's home language to send home with corresponding flashcards to strengthen the school-to-home connection and help ensure that all students are receiving the supports they need to fill learning gaps and keep parents in the loop with their child's progress.
With ESGI, an administrator can view data from the whole school to the student level. When all schools are chosen on the list, the pie chart reflects the data for the whole district. Using purple managed subject tabs allows administrators to choose which custom assessments to publish to groups of teachers. This allows for continuity across the whole district. Choose from the reports on the admin dashboard to view the data for all students. As a school site administrator, you can also create custom tabs for your campus with common assessments, as well as run reports at the school level. Analyzing trends to make educational decisions is easy with ESGI. Administrators can use the growth report to monitor progress in real time and provide an accurate view of classroom trends. Similar to the teacher account, the item analysis report at the school site level identifies gaps in skills across the campus. This report can be downloaded to see the specific skills each student needs to practice. It is ideal for using data to make small groups. ESGI admin accounts are always included with the purchase of teacher licenses.
Finding your focus with ESGI and the BEAS is an easy and equitable way to help all of your smallest scholars reach their full potential. Start your 60-day free trial with ESGI today. Go to www.esgisoftware.com and enter the promo code FOCUS23.
Awesome. So now that Christopher Robin has been progress monitored 2 times weekly using ESGI, now we're at mid-year and it's time to benchmark him again using the BEAS to see the progress that he's made. BEAS results, you'll see the growth that he's made. Tammy, if you could hit the button one more time, I think the next report will go up on top of that. There we go. So you can see a lot of those supports on the right side performance level went up to monitor, and he actually got on track for the sight words. Looking at the next report, you'll see his, this was his beginning of the year math results. His percentile rank is, within the 9% to 25%. And if you click again, we can see within the math domain that he still requires support in these sub math domains, but his percentile rank and performance has hopped up quite a bit from 16% to 37% percentile rank using these 2 tools together. And just a summary of the process using these 2 tools. So you benchmark using the BEAS, and within that, every week you can progress monitor using ESGI's huge library of progress monitoring assessments.
Okay, thanks, Rebecca. Go ahead.
Yeah, so just a summary of what we went over. We know that early identification and intervention is necessary to ensure that these young learners are obtaining these early developmental and academic skills, and that the BEAS is a great way to measure their performance on these literacy and math skills from ages 3 years, 6 months through 7 years, 11 months. And that ESGI is a progress monitoring tool that you can customize different assessments or even add your own, or you pick from the library of all the progress monitoring assessments that they have. They have a 60-day free trial right now where you can start for 60 days using the promo code FOCUS23. And if you have any questions about signing up, you can email them at support@esgisoftware.com. And lastly, if you have any questions from Tammy or myself, here is our contact information, and please feel free to reach out to us with any questions.
Okay. So I'm looking to see, lots of these have been been answered. Thanks, Jen, for doing that while we were going through. Looks like everything's been answered. There were some questions about what languages are available for home languages. Questions about what are the letters ESGI mean? It's educational software for guiding instruction is what ESGI means. Someone's asking, is there something similar for children under the age of 3? I'm assuming you're talking about the BEAS, or would that be ESGI, Scotty? The BEAS. I'm not aware of any measurements that go beyond, go below age 3 with these early literacy skills and the math skills. Jen just mentioned that ESGI is primarily used for pre-K through 2nd grade. Rebecca, I don't know if you're aware of anything similar to the BEAS that goes any lower than 3-6.
No, I'm not sure of anything for these academic domains. I mean, there are assessments that can assess like a student's developmental milestones and other things within the Battelle suite of assessments that the BEAS is under, which
Right.
can start at birth, but nothing for these academic domains under 3.
Right. The BDI has the different domains of, language communication, motor, cognitive, etc. That starts out as Rebecca mentioned at birth. So, and that's the only thing I can think of as well. All right, I don't see any other questions. Again, I want to thank you guys for joining in today for this session. And again, if you have any questions for either Rebecca or I, here's our contact information. You can email us directly. If you want copy of the recording, etc., you can email me. And we look forward to seeing you on a future Beyond the Score webinar. Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you.